The AI demo worked. The output looked useful. The stakeholders got excited. Then the hard questions started. Who owns it? What data can it use? Who approves the answer? How will it be logged? What happens when it is wrong? Here's my point. Do not build the AI platform first. Prove one reusable capability first. AI demos are useful, but they are also dangerous. Not because demos are bad. Demos are often the right way to explore an idea. The danger is that a good demo can make a weak system look stronger than it really is. In a demo, the data is usually clean. The examples are selected, the risk is low, the audience is forgiving, the workflow is simple, the edge cases are avoided, the security model is often ignored, and the answer only has to look useful for a few minutes. That is not production. Production is where the business starts asking harder questions. Can real users use this every day? Does it work with messy inputs? Does it handle missing information? Does it know which documents are authoritative? Does it respect permissions? Does it produce consistent, structured outputs? Can we log what happened? Can we explain why the result was produced? Can we measure whether it saved time or improved quality? Can someone support it when it fails? That is where many AI projects slow down or die. The model may still be capable. The demo may still have been valid, but the implementation approach was not ready for business use. A chatbot that answers a few sample questions is not the same thing as a reusable assistant capability. A prompt that works on 10 test documents is not the same thing as a governed workflow. A proof of concept is not an MVP, and an MVP is not production. Those distinctions matter because they affect budget, expectations, staffing, risk, and trust. If leaders treat the demo as if it already proved production readiness, they will underestimate the work. If developers treat the demo as if it already proved architecture, they may build on a fragile foundation. If users treat the demo as if it already proved reliability, they may lose confidence when real-world complexity appears. A good demo should create interest. A good prototype should create evidence. Those are not the same thing. The purpose of the next step is not to make the demo prettier. The purpose is to test whether one useful AI capability can survive contact with real workflow conditions. A prototype should answer a specific question. Can this capability work well enough in a bounded business context to justify the next investment? That is different from proving that AI is interesting. Everyone already knows AI is interesting. The prototype should prove whether one defined business capability is feasible, useful, and worth expanding. For example, do not prototype an HR assistant. That is too broad. Prototype one capability, such as answering employee policy questions from approved handbook sections with source references, confidence indicators, and escalation guidance. Do not prototype a finance chatbot. Prototype invoice discrepancy review using invoice data, purchase order data, vendor terms, and business rules. Do not prototype an IT support assistant. Prototype ticket classification, severity suggestion, missing information detection, and initial response drafting. The prototype should test the real shape of the work. Can the inputs be defined? Can the outputs be structured? Can the system use the right documents or data? Can permissions be respected? Can the answer be reviewed by a human? Can the output be useful inside an actual workflow? Can failures be identified clearly? That last point matters. A good prototype does not hide failure. It exposes failure in a way the team can learn from. Maybe the documents are outdated. Maybe the workflow is not documented. Maybe users ask questions in ways the team did not expect. Maybe the data is available, but not in a usable form. Maybe the business rules are known by experienced employees but not written down. Maybe the model performs well on easy examples but struggles with edge cases. That is useful information. A prototype should help the organization learn whether the problem is technical, operational, data-related, governance-related, or business definition-related. For Microsoft-based organizations, the prototype should also test the implementation path. Can this be built cleanly in .NET? Can the capability live in a C# class library or service? Can it use Azure OpenAI safely? Can it connect to SQL Server, SharePoint, Microsoft 365, or internal APIs? Can it expose a clear contract through ASP.NET Core or OpenAPI? Can logs, review, and feedback be captured? The prototype is not the destination. It is the evidence-gathering step between a promising idea and a responsible investment. The first AI capability should not be selected because it sounds impressive. It should be selected because it is valuable, bounded, testable, and realistic. That is the practical rule. A good first capability usually has several traits. The task happens frequently, it consumes meaningful human time, the current process is slow, inconsistent, expensive, or frustrating, the workflow is narrow enough to understand, the business rules are known or discoverable, the required data or documents are reasonably available, the risk is low to moderate, human review is practical, the output can be measured, and there is a clear business owner. That business owner is not optional. AI assistant capabilities need subject matter experts who can say, this answer is useful, this output is wrong, this policy source is outdated, or this recommendation would create risk. Without that feedback, the technical team is guessing. A strong first capability is often a decision support task rather than an action-taking task. For example, classify a support ticket, summarize an incident, extract invoice terms, draft an internal response, identify missing information, summarize a policy section, compare two documents, recommend an escalation. Those are useful tasks, but they still keep a human in control. That is a good place to start. Avoid starting with tasks that directly move money, change employee records, approve legal positions, modify production systems, or communicate externally without review. Those may become possible later, but they require stronger controls. The first capability should build trust. It should not create unnecessary risk. A useful selection framework is simple. Score each candidate capability on business pain, frequency, manual effort, data availability, document quality, workflow clarity, rule clarity, integration complexity, security complexity, risk level, human review feasibility, ROI potential, prototype feasibility, stakeholder ownership, and production complexity. Then be blunt with the result. Some ideas should not start yet. Some need workflow clarification. Some need better documents or data preparation. Some are good prototype candidates. A few are strong enough to move quickly toward MVP. This is where many organizations benefit from an AI assistant capability assessment. Not because they lack ideas. They usually have too many ideas. The assessment helps them pick the right first capability. The quality of an AI prototype depends heavily on the quality of the business context it receives. This is where many teams over-focus on the model and under-focus on the knowledge. A better model cannot fully compensate for unclear documents, missing examples, outdated policies, inconsistent data, or undocumented business rules. If the assistant capability needs to answer policy questions, the team needs approved policy sources. If it needs to summarize invoices, the team needs representative invoices and related purchase orders. If it needs to classify support tickets, the team needs real or representative tickets, categories, past resolutions, and escalation rules. If it needs to explain budget variances, the team needs the relevant financial data, categories, business notes, and calculation rules. The prototype does not always need perfect data, but it needs enough real or representative context to test whether the capability is grounded in reality. This is the idea of AI assistant knowledge readiness. Before prototyping, the team should ask, are the source documents current? Are they authoritative? Are there multiple versions of the truth? Are examples available? Are the examples representative? Are permissions clear? Is metadata available? Can the system tell which document applies to which department, location, role, product, customer, or time period? Who maintains the knowledge? Who decides when a document is outdated? Those questions matter because retrieval is not magic. Giving AI access to a pile of documents does not automatically create a reliable assistant. The system needs to know which sources are trusted. It needs to retrieve the right context. It needs to avoid irrelevant or outdated information. It needs to cite sources where appropriate. It needs to recognize when the answer is not available. And it needs to escalate instead of bluffing. For Microsoft-based organizations, this often means reviewing SharePoint libraries, Microsoft 365 documents, SQL Server data, internal APIs, knowledge bases, ticket systems, policy repositories, and file permissions. The prototype should test those realities early. If the data is not ready, that does not mean the opportunity is bad. It means the next step may be data preparation, document cleanup, metadata design, or workflow clarification before building the prototype. That is still progress. A prototype should reveal what the organization actually has, not pretend the knowledge layer is cleaner than it is. Security cannot wait until production. That does not mean the prototype needs every production control on day one. But the prototype should be designed with the future security model in mind. Otherwise, the team may prove the wrong thing. A prototype that works only because it ignores permissions has not proven that the real system will work. It has proven that the demo can access information it may not be allowed to access later. That creates false confidence. Before prototyping an AI assistant capability, the team should define basic permission boundaries. Who can use the capability? What data can they access? What documents can be retrieved? What user context matters? What output should be hidden, limited, or escalated? What actions are prohibited? What requires human approval? These questions change by domain. An HR assistant may need stronger restrictions around employee information. A finance assistant may need approval boundaries around payments, vendors, budgets, and financial decisions. An IT assistant may need different access for help desk staff, system administrators, developers, and security teams. An operations assistant may need site-specific, role-specific, or shift-specific access. The prototype should not bypass these realities. It should model them simply but honestly. Human approval boundaries are especially important. Informational capabilities are usually lower risk. The assistant helps the user understand something, but the human decides. Recommendation capabilities are higher risk. The assistant suggests a next step, but the human should review and approve. Action-taking capabilities are the highest risk. The assistant affects systems, customers, employees, money, compliance, or production operations. Those require stronger controls. The more a capability can affect money, customers, employees, compliance, or production systems, the stronger the approval boundary must be. That rule should guide the prototype. Logging also matters. Even in a prototype, the team should capture enough information to learn. What input was used? What documents or data were retrieved? What output was generated? Was the output accepted, rejected, or edited? What failed? What did the reviewer say? This is not just compliance thinking. It is how the system improves. Security, permissions, approval, and logging are not paperwork. They are part of making the capability trustworthy. Prototype, MVP, and production are not different words for the same thing. They prove different levels of readiness. A prototype proves whether one capability can work in a bounded scenario. It may use limited users, limited data, simplified integration, and a basic interface. The goal is learning. Can the capability produce useful output? Can users validate it? Can the business see value? Can the technical path work? What breaks first? An MVP proves whether the capability can be used in a real workflow by a limited group of users. That means the system needs more structure, authentication, role-based access, a usable interface, integration with selected systems, feedback capture, basic logging and auditing, a test plan, a deployment path, support expectations. The MVP is no longer just evidence for the project team. It is a usable internal system for a defined audience. Production is a different level again. Production requires security hardening, monitoring, error handling, cost tracking, governance, operational support, documentation, training, change control, versioning, maintenance, and a clear ownership model. Production also requires the organization to decide what happens when the assistant is wrong, incomplete, unavailable, outdated, or uncertain. That is where vague AI enthusiasm becomes real enterprise responsibility. This distinction protects everyone. Executives understand what they are funding. Department leaders understand what users can expect. Developers understand what must be built. Security teams understand when risk controls enter. Project managers understand the promotion path. Users understand whether they are testing, piloting, or relying on a system. A common failure pattern is skipping the middle. The team builds a demo. The demo impresses stakeholders. Then someone asks to just put it into production. That is usually a bad idea. The better path is assessment, prototype, MVP, then production. Each stage should have a promotion gate. What did we prove? What did we fail to prove? What risks remain? What must be improved before the next stage? What is the expected business value? Who owns the next decision? That discipline prevents overbuilding weak ideas and underbuilding strong ones. It also keeps AI adoption grounded. A prototype is not production, but a well-designed prototype can be the first serious step toward production. The purpose of an AI assistant capability assessment is to decide whether a workflow is ready for a prototype and what the prototype should prove. It is not just a brainstorming session. Most organizations already have more AI ideas than they can execute. The harder problem is prioritization. Which idea has enough business value? Which workflow is clear enough? Which data or documents are available? Which department has ownership? Which risks are manageable? Which opportunity is small enough to prototype but valuable enough to matter? That is what the assessment should answer. A practical assessment evaluates business pain, frequency, manual effort, data availability, document quality, workflow clarity, business rule clarity, integration complexity, security complexity, risk level, human review feasibility, ROI potential, prototype feasibility, stakeholder ownership, and production complexity. The output should not be vague. The opportunity should be classified. Weak candidate, possible candidate, good candidate, excellent candidate. And the recommended next step should be clear. Do not start yet. Clarify the workflow first. Prepare the data or documents first. Build a prototype. Move toward MVP. or plan a production system. That bluntness is useful. It prevents organizations from spending money on AI ideas that are not ready. It also helps strong ideas move faster because the assessment defines the first capability, the required context, the expected output, the initial users, the review process, and the path toward MVP or production. For a Microsoft-based business, the assessment should also consider the likely implementation path. Will this involve .NET class libraries, ASP.NET Core APIs, Azure OpenAI, semantic kernel, SQL Server or Azure SQL, SharePoint or Microsoft 365, Teams, Power Apps, Power Automate, existing internal applications, authentication and authorization, logging and monitoring? Those choices do not all need to be finalized before a prototype, but they should be visible. The assessment creates the bridge between business interest and technical execution. That is what makes it valuable. It turns "we should do something with AI" into "this specific workflow is a good candidate for one reusable AI assistant capability, and here's what we need to prove next." That is how serious enterprise AI work should begin. Reusable AI assistant capabilities should begin with assessment, not platform building. The right path is to choose one bounded workflow, prototype one useful capability, and then decide whether it deserves MVP or production investment. You can explore more practical enterprise AI resources at ain.net.com. Thanks for watching.